Hey everyone, this is Greg with Engaging History. Today we're going to look at a lesson on the Cuban Revolution. I call it the Cuban Revolution 4x4. But first, let's start with the quote of the week. Stephen Covey says, "Start with the end in mind." Remember, we study history to understand our world, avoid past mistakes, and appreciate other cultures. And as always, this lesson aims to be both fun and challenging for your students. Now, that Stephen Covey quote, "Start with the end in mind," is very applicable to today's lesson. The Cuban Revolution 4x4. When I designed the 4x4 lesson, it came out of this backward planning idea. I thought, what do I want my students to come away with? And I went about designing a lesson in order to reach that end. In this case, I wanted my students to walk away from a lesson on Cuba and the Cuban Revolution, knowing what caused it, who were some of the major figures involved, what were some of the details, what happened, and what were the effects. How did the Cuban Revolution affect history going forward? So what I want to do is show you just a few of these slides. But basically, I'm going to hand out a blank graphic organizer that looks like this. So students have a grid of 16. They're going to come up with 4 causes, 4 figures, 4 details, and 4 effects as we go through each slide. So here's an example of one of the causes. This is cause number 4. A young Fidel Castro is pictured here. He tried to legally overthrow President Batista. Didn't work out, so he turned to an armed uprising instead. As we go through each slide, students will cut out the picture, label it, and put it in the correct box, and then we'd move on. Here's an example of one of the figures, Che Guevara. Yes, that Che Guevara. He was in Cuba helping out the Castro brothers with the revolution. We would do the same thing here. We would cut out Che Guevara, label him, and stick him in the figures box. And I'll show you one more from effects. One of the 4 effects I talk about is regional tension. This obviously didn't sit well with the United States, being in the middle of the Cold War with communist Russia or the Soviet Union, and this caused a lot of regional tension. So again, students would cut that out, label it, and put it in the effects box. By the end of the lesson, they have all 16 labeled on their paper. I have a Fidel Castro stick figure that goes with this lesson as well if you want to check it out. Thanks again for watching. Take a minute to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll put a link to this lesson as well as some other fun lessons and freebies below. Thanks again.